Hello and welcome to Banff Centre Talks. I'm Sandra Laurent. My guest is one of the most important voices in Canadian documentary filmmaking. Alanis Obomsawin was born in Odanak territory in New Hampshire in a small community called Lebanon. At the ripe old age of 6 months, she moved to the Odanak Reserve near Montreal. 9 years later, the family moved to Trois-Rivières, where she would go to school there and return to the Odanak Reserve for summer and Christmas vacations. And that's the beginning. What Alanis has done in the past 8 decades is nothing short of inspirational and remarkable. Alanis made her first documentary for the National Film Board in 1971. She has made 40 since. 40. Those include Trick or Treaty, Kanesatake, 270 Years of Resistance, Is the Crown at War with Us, and Richard Cardinal, Cry from a Diary of a Métis Child. She has been a singer and a songwriter, a recording artist, a printmaker, and an engraver, and she has won awards, many awards, 18 for Kanesatake alone. She has been made an officer of the Order of Canada. And as I said, this is just a partial list. I am so pleased to have Alanis with us here as part of the series of Banff Centre Talks. Alanis, welcome.
Thank you.
So Alanis, you've been recognized with just about every award that I can think of. Do these awards mean anything to you? And what do they mean?
Well, when you have recognition like that, it's always very touching because they talk about you and you kind of see your life like a movie band. And not only for me, but for what I represent and all those people who are in these films, it's also recognition for them. And it's also, it brings a lot of interest from other people. I get invitation from all over the world with the films. And it means that we make progress and we better our life, and the people have their own voice and they can be heard directly. And it makes changes. And over the years, I've seen a lot of changes.
Mm-hmm. So here's a question that you may not have one answer to, but what is it that drives you?
It started a long time ago. Mm-hmm. And the first reason was really the educational system in Canada and the way that they thought the history of Canada it was well designed, and it's sad to say that these books were written by the Christian brothers, and the way that they thought the children was a way of making sure that the children are going to hate our people. There was a lot of hate that came through because of this way of teaching. And at a very young age, I was revolting against it. And this was the reason. I didn't know quite how, but I wanted to do something to influence changes in the educational system.
Mm-hmm. Sort of paint for us a picture of, where you grew up and who influenced you. If you could describe for us what it was like in your community at that time.
It was very different than it is now. In those days, Odanak is a very small village. It's 1 mile by 4 miles, and everything at that time that happened was on that 1 mile. And we had an earth road. We did not have electricity or running water. And every house you went to, women were busy making baskets out of ash, the tree, not the dope. I have to say it because some people might think so. And sweet grass. So there was a very comforting scent. Every home you went to, you could smell the ash and the sweet grass. And women were busy making baskets and the men would do carvings, and they made birch bark canoes. So it was like that then. And then when the season for hunting came, most of the men would go work as guide at a private lake in Quebec. And this is the way life was. And in the summertime, even before me, apparently in the summertime the village was empty of people because everybody would go someplace in New England, which originally was our land, and they would open a little store, sometimes a portable store, and they would have our people making baskets. And in those days, a person could come and say, oh, I want a basket 2 feet high, I want it to be round and fit a corner, and they would do everything to order and the colors that they wished. And they did very, very well. And in the early 1900s, Odanak, the village became, it was very beautiful. Like people made money and they built their own homes, and it was a very healthy place. And as the years went on, they began to have trouble at the border. The American government wanted to start taxing our people for what they were doing. And so people start to not go there anymore. So the basket business that had been so good was now very low. And here in Canada, Indian Affairs took over the business. And they start making people work really hard and paying them very poorly. So then everything changed. And there was high poverty for a very long time. And we used to have a train station on our land. So it meant at that time that all the people of the village could get on the train for free. So when a family was going to the States, they'd bring 4 or 5 people who could make baskets, and they would go and live in a place of summer where there is a lake or a river, and where there are hotels, so the tourists would come and buy the baskets. So they began to, they were business people many, many years ago. Yes.
Speaking of business, your first venture as an artist was as a singer and a songwriter. And you did that in New York City and later with the Mariposa Folk Festival. And I wanted to ask you if singing for you is another way of being a storyteller. And did most of your music come from Odanak or the Abenaki traditions?
Yes. Singing became very important for me because it's a place where you can tell stories. And I sang about our tradition and our history. And I wanted to be in the classroom because I knew what the children were hearing about our history. So I felt I have to tell another story to the children. So I began to tour in many schools, and the first year I did it, I could not answer everybody because I got so much demand. And it was funny because the first time I would arrive to a school with my drum, and the teachers, they were so afraid of me. They were looking with mean eyes. What is she going to tell the children? But me, I was not interested in telling them, you're lying. I just came and told the children another story, and the real story. And I taught them how to sing different songs. And at recreation time, I went outside and played Indian games with the children. So when I would come to a school, they'd say, oh, stay another week and do all the classrooms. And I became very well known through that. And this was in the 60s, in the early 60s. And in those days, they were telling me that the prisons were full of our people. They said that 68% of the prisoners are Indigenous. So I thought, well, I'm going to go to the jails. So I did a lot of touring in a lot of jails over the years. And then I started doing concerts, and I was invited to a lot of folk festival, and it was wonderful because then when I did Mariposa for 9 years, they gave me my own stage and money for me to invite many different artists, and many of them that I invited was the first time they got on the plane. So it was very exciting all around.
How did singing and songwriting evolve into your documentary work that you have devoted so much of your life to?
At first, I was writing songs, some in my own language, and some in French, and some in English. Also, some traditional sounds I sang about. And my main reason for everything was always to educate. And in 1962, I think, I started to make a campaign to build a swimming pool on my reserve. Excuse me. And I thought it would be easy, but it didn't turn out to be easy. It took me a long time. And somebody made a film on what I was doing. And in 1966, this film appeared on CBC Primetime on a program called Telescope. And from there, some producers from the film board invited me to go there. And I started meeting people, and that's how I eventually, they gave me a contract to be a consultant for a film. And I said yes. But as soon as I began to do it, I realized, no, I'm never doing this again, because I quickly realized that it was to use me to enter the reserve. And then I started to really worry if the people didn't like the film. They would say, it's Alanis who brought them here. Mm-hmm. So I told them, and they never asked me that again. And eventually, because education was my main subject, there was a studio at the National Film Board called Multimedia. And everything they did there, it was for educational purposes. And it was strips of 35 millimeters that was used in a very small projector to tell your story. And the sound would come on a long playing record on another machine here. When I finished the first educational kit, I was worried what the people would say, because it would say, the first time they would put a student next to that little projector. And the chief would say, there were 12 chiefs here, and the child would change the frame by hand. By the time I finished the kit, it was a little bit more advanced, and it was a sound. So the record would say, there were 12 chiefs here, boing, and the frame would change. The boing after each phrase. And I thought, oh, what are they going to think, when they hear this? But we were so excited, because it was the first time that we had a professional product for teaching in the classroom, and it was the voice of a nation. So after a while, nobody cared about the boing.